Fully imagined cultural futures were the luxury of another day, one in which now was of some greater duration. For us, of course, things can change so abruptly, so violently, so profoundly, that futures like those of our grandparents have been sufficient now to stand on. We have no future, because our present is too volatile. We have only risk management, the spinning of the given moment scenarios, pattern recognition. Like the title of the book. Sometimes it feels like a lot of the books and movies and things that come out nowadays want to pretend that we're still living in like 2005. I mean, you sometimes see smartphones in movies, but rarely used in the way that we actually use smartphones in our daily lives. And whenever the internet or social media is mentioned, it's kind of in like a coy, joking way, as if we kind of have like a hard time coping with the fact that it actually exists. I don't think that's an accident. I think there's some very good reasons for that. We're all experiencing a kind of technological whiplash at the moment, where we don't have a good idea of what technologies actually exist, and we're kind of perpetually shocked when we discover that something like DALL-E 2 exists. But also we're all just a little bit embarrassed by the way we spend our time on the internet, and you don't see scenes in books generally where a character spends 2 hours browsing Reddit for the same reason that you don't see scenes where, you know, people use the restroom. It's just a fact of life that's kind of boring and a little bit embarrassing. All of which is to say that William Gibson and pattern recognition kind of subverts all of that. This is a book that is very much obsessed with the present and seeks to portray it in all its kind of grotesqueness and uncomfortableness as accurately as possible. William Gibson is probably most well known for Neuromancer, this book, which came out in the 1980s and kind of invented the entire cyberpunk genre. It invented the term cyberspace and was groundbreaking at its time. But pattern recognition it's very much kind of a 180 from his previous work, in that it's focused on the present rather than the future. It's not explicitly science fiction, but it looks at the world through the lens of science fiction, if that makes sense. The novel very much acknowledges that there isn't much of a distinction anymore between science fiction and present day fiction, because, you know, we're constantly shocked by how fast culture and technology changes around us. The book is about a woman named Case, who is what's known as a cool hunter. She goes around and tries to discover the latest trends. And Case discovers this footage that has been surfacing online from an anonymous artist that has become kind of a cult obsession for a small group of strangers on the internet. And every month or so, a new clip of footage will get released, and people on this internet forum will go crazy trying to analyze it. And so there are extended passages in this book that are just her talking to a bunch of internet strangers, trying to uncover the hidden secrets of this footage, which is something I haven't really seen depicted in a book before. And it's kind of a relatable experience for people who spend a lot of time on the internet. So Case is hired by a company to discover who the maker of this footage is and where it's coming from. And it becomes this kind of international mystery sort of thing, where she's going from one place to another trying to figure out the origins of this mysterious footage on the internet. But a large part of the reason why this book works so well for me is because the prose is just absolutely astounding. William Gibson manages to give an extraordinary amount of detail in as few words as possible. He's almost like Hemingway, if Hemingway wrote about the internet and pop culture. All of his descriptions are filled with very specific detail and include cultural references that situate the novel in a very specific time and place, which is 2002, in kind of this post 9/11 environment, where it kind of feels like the world has already ended and there's now just so much stuff happening all the time that it's kind of just become noise. Like there's not a main source of news anymore. There's not a main catalyst for things happening. It's just kind of everything everywhere all at once. But then emerging out of all this noise is this kind of almost supernatural footage that manages to capture an audience worldwide. And the way this footage is described, I don't think this book could be successfully adapted into a movie, because this footage has a really kind of overwhelming effect on people, to the extent that it's able to bring Case to tears sometimes. And the idea that something like that could just kind of come out of obscurity and stand so much on its own merits against all the noise of the internet is just really strangely beautiful. And again, it's a plot that I haven't really seen in any other book before. By using this wonderful, poignant mystery, Gibson is really able to create a more accurate depiction of the 21st century than I have really seen anywhere else, to the extent that it's just as shocking as any science fiction novel I've ever read, including Neuromancer. I know I'm going to have to read this book again to fully comprehend the extent of it. The book is filled with phrases and language that is now just burned into my brain. Like Case has this mantra that she repeats to herself over and over again, which is, "He took a duck in the face at 250 knots." And it's kind of it's a reminder of a specific person she knew who, while flying in an airplane, was hit, the windshield of his plane was hit by a duck, and the windshield exploded, and he had to kind of fly the rest of the way with glass shards from the windshield in his eye. And she kind of uses that as, it's like an involuntary tick. She just says that whenever she needs to kind of remind herself that she's capable of pushing through certain situations. So yeah, I don't want to spoil the conclusion of this mystery, but I strongly, strongly recommend this book. And if you've read Neuromancer and you thought that it wasn't for you, or you just didn't really understand it, I think this is a much better jumping on point for William Gibson in terms of its readability. It's very dense, but it's a lot easier to get through, because he's not describing future technology in his kind of minimalist way, but he's describing the present world. And that makes it a lot easier to focus on the story and the characters and grasp the kind of brilliance, really, of his prose without, constantly scratching your head. So this is kind of a new thing that I'm doing on the channel. I think I'm gonna experiment a little bit with doing some book reviews. So if this is something you're interested in seeing, definitely hang around. I'll be talking a lot more about further books I read, a lot of science fiction and fantasy and that sort of thing, but really just whatever I'm reading at the moment. I think I'm probably going to read some more Gibson in the future. I might reread Neuromancer and try to understand what actually happened this time around. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll probably continue doing short comedy related things as well. So it'll be a bit of a hodgepodge. But if any of that sounds like anything you'd be interested in, you know the drill. Thanks.